Richard Mason, ever the seasoned businessman, immediately adopted a diplomatic tone. "Mr. Collins, I deeply regret if your wife had an unpleasant experience here. That is certainly not how we conduct business." Alexander arched an eyebrow. "Is that so?" He let the silence hang just long enough to be uncomfortable before continuing. "Tell me, Mr. Mason, if I were not standing here in this suit, stepping out of a 7-figure Rolls-Royce, would I receive the same courtesy?" Mason hesitated, searching for the right words. Blake, meanwhile, was visibly unraveling, his confidence shaken. "I won't waste much of your time," Alexander continued. "I'm still interested in the Azure coupe. But my decision to purchase will depend on how you address what happened yesterday." Mason straightened, his mind no doubt racing to calculate the best response. "Of course, Mr. Collins. Please step into my office. I'd love to discuss how we can make this right." Alexander nodded, but before following, he turned to Daniel, the young salesman who had treated Maggie with respect. "Daniel, isn't it?" The young man stood a little taller. "Yes, sir. My wife mentioned you spoke to her with kindness. That doesn't go unnoticed." He glanced at Mason. "I imagine Boston Luxury Motors could benefit from employees who understand the real definition of service." Daniel's eyes widened slightly, and Blake looked as if he might be sick. With that, Alexander followed Mason into his office, leaving the rest of the showroom staff in stunned silence. Blake, now exposed, stood frozen, his once imposing confidence in ruins. Outside, the gleaming Rolls-Royce sat in the sunlight, a quiet but unmistakable symbol of the lesson unfolding inside. A lesson in humility, respect, and the danger of making assumptions. A lesson in worth. The price of assumptions. Showrooms, they say, are meant for a certain class of people. The hushed whispers rippled through the gathered onlookers. Someone chuckled under their breath. Maggie scanned the faces around her, some filled with judgment, others with smug amusement. And then there was Blake, his self-satisfied smirk mirrored by the silent approval of his boss. She had faced discrimination before. Who hasn't? But rarely had it been so blatant, so public. "I see," she said, her voice calm, her dignity untouched, though her spirit bore the bruises. Without another word, she turned toward the exit. Behind her, Blake's voice carried just enough to be heard. "Some people just don't know their place." The sting of humiliation burned, but Maggie didn't falter. As she stepped into the crisp morning air, she pulled out her phone. A slow, determined smile tugged at her lips. The Collins estate sat gracefully on 5 sprawling acres outside Boston. Understated, elegant, never revealing the vast fortune behind its gates. Alexander Collins preferred it that way. At 41, he had revolutionized renewable energy storage, amassed billions, and built a legacy. But he had never cared for the spectacle of wealth. What mattered to him was something far more valuable. When Maggie entered his home office, Alexander immediately put aside his work. 15 years of marriage had taught him everything he needed to know about her expressions. Something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, already moving toward her. Maggie sank into the leather chair, the morning's events crashing over her again. She exhaled sharply, then forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It was educational," she murmured dryly. She recounted everything. The snide remarks, the dismissive attitude, the condescension that had dripped from Blake's every word. Alexander listened in silence, his expression growing darker with every detail. Finally Maggie sighed. "It's not about me," she said, shaking her head. "I have the privilege of walking away, knowing the truth. But how many people face that same treatment every day, without the luxury of knowing they could afford what they're being denied?" Alexander nodded, his jaw tightening in thought. This was what he admired most about his wife. Even when she was wronged, her concern remained with others. "So," he said at last, "what do you want to do about it?" Maggie hesitated. "A part of me wants to do nothing. Just buy Caroline's gift somewhere else and be done with it. But then, I think about that young salesman, Daniel. He treated me with respect, even when his colleagues didn't. And I think about all the others who don't have the choice to walk away. She met Alexander's gaze, her expression clear and unwavering. People like Blake Thompson need to understand. Wealth isn't measured by appearance. I don't want vengeance, Alex. I want awareness. A slow smile spread across Alexander's face, an idea forming. I think I have a way to accomplish both. Maggie narrowed her eyes. Nothing too dramatic, she warned, knowing her husband's protective nature all too well. No buying the dealership just to fire everyone. Alexander laughed. Nothing so cliché. But maybe a little education is in order. Together they crafted a plan, not for revenge but for enlightenment. Something that would challenge perceptions in a way simple retribution never could. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Blake Thompson strode into Boston Luxury Motors, adjusting his signature blue tie. Last night, he'd laughed about the entitled woman with his colleagues over drinks, another foolish dreamer who thought she belonged in the world of luxury. The showroom gleamed under the artfully positioned lights. Every vehicle, meticulously arranged to maximize its allure. Blake had just finished the morning briefing, reinforcing his philosophy. We cater to a certain clientele. It's not elitism, it's efficiency. Daniel, the young salesman, remained silent, his discomfort obvious. Blake made a mental note to have a word with him about proper customer assessments. Then, at precisely 10:17 a.m., everything changed. A hushed murmur spread as an unmistakable engine purred outside. Heads turned toward the glass-front entrance. Car unlike any other glided to a stop. Even Blake, who had long grown numb to high-end automobiles, felt his pulse quicken. A Rolls-Royce Phantom extended wheelbase. But not just any Phantom. This one had a custom midnight blue finish that shimmered subtly in the sunlight. Conservative estimates placed its worth at over $1.2 million. Before anyone could react, the driver, a uniformed chauffeur, stepped out and with white-gloved precision, opened the rear passenger door. And out stepped a man of quiet, commanding presence. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of wealth without needing to shout. Salt and pepper hair, neatly groomed. Every step exuding effortless authority. Blake's salesman instincts kicked into overdrive. This wasn't just a prospect. This was a whale. A VIP of the highest order. Blake moved in before any of his colleagues could. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors. Blake Thompson, sales manager. It's an honor to have you here. The man regarded Blake with a polite, unreadable expression. Then, offering a handshake, he spoke. Alexander Collins. Blake's mind whirred. The name seemed familiar, but... Mr. Collins, he said smoothly. It's truly an honor. What can I help you with today? We just received a limited edition. Alexander raised a hand, cutting him off. Actually, I'm here about a specific car. The Azure Coupe. Midnight blue. Blake's smile brightened. Excellent choice, sir. One of only 15 produced this year. I'd be delighted to. I know where it is, Alexander interrupted, his tone sharpening ever so slightly. My wife was here yesterday. She was interested in purchasing it. Blake's trained smile faltered. Your wife? A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Margaret Collins. The silence that followed was deafening. Blake's face drained of color. Behind him, Daniel audibly inhaled. Alexander's voice remained eerily calm. She was dressed in jeans and a white t-shirt. And you suggested she might be better suited to looking at used cars. Blake opened his mouth, but no words came. From the back of the showroom, Richard Mason, the dealership owner, approached cautiously. Mr. Collins, I deeply regret if there was any misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, Daniel spoke up suddenly. Miss Collins was dismissed. Repeatedly. Based on nothing but her appearance. Blake shot him a warning glare, but it was too late. The damage was done. Alexander turned to Richard. I was considering not just the Azure, but a fleet replacement, 7 vehicles, and possibly updates to my personal collection. Mason's face paled. That sale alone could cover their entire quarterly target. But now, Alexander continued smoothly, I'm questioning whether this dealership deserves my